All right, good evening, council. If everyone's good to go, we're a couple minutes early, but I think we can call the meeting to order. Um, we'll start tonight with a moment of reflection before we get into the approval of the agendas. So we'll start with a moment of reflection now. All right, thank you very much. So for the approval of the agendas, we have two. Anyone prepared to make a motion on the consent agenda? Councillor Henniger makes the motion. Any discussions or things you want to pull? Otherwise, call to question. All in favor. Motion is carried. A regular meeting agenda. I've heard of no additions or changes. So a motion to approve the agenda is presented. Councillor Fox makes that motion. All in favor. Any opposed? Motion is carried. For the good of council, does anyone have something they wish to share with the whole council? Some events, some highlights, something going on? Some birthdays, not birthdays. Councillor Henniger.
I'd just like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the organizing group who put on the banquet on Thursday last week. It was really great, and if you didn't get tickets this year, I highly recommend checking out next year. It's just great to see our community out, and congratulations to all those winners and business owners. It was great.
CEO Merlet.
This weekend at FP Walsh School was held I guess it's an annual event now, the Alumni Invitational Volleyball Tournament, and it was a very successful event. This year we just had a men's tournament. There was no women's side this year, but it went very well. There were two alumni FP Walsh teams in the tournament because of a team that had dropped out last minute. One team won the consolation side and the other team came in second, so the two of them brought home $1,000 for the FP Walsh volleyball program, so that's exciting. And then, yeah, it was a very successful weekend.
Any other comments for the good of council? I know I had the privilege today, and I think it was just over a week ago, of hosting a grade 6 class in this council chamber for a mock council meeting to have a public hearing and go through a bylaw. So it was really fun to do. I've always enjoyed it. Every class is pretty interesting how different they are. Some are very expressive and others not so much. So it's a great learning experience for them. And I think I keep telling them they probably know more about municipal government than probably 90% of Alberta after just taking that 1 hour in council chambers and going through a mock trial. So our mock council meeting. So that was a lot of fun. Kudos to the grade 6 class. Anything else? If there is none, we'll move on to our delegations for tonight, of which we have two, and we'll start tonight with the Oldman River Regional Service Commission, and we have both Len and Christopher here, and thank you for coming to council tonight, and the floor is yours. Yeah, we look forward to hearing more from Orsk.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having us. My name is Christopher Northcott, and I am the new chair for the Oldman River Regional Services Commission, and I fill some pretty big shoes. Gordon Wolstenholme served in this capacity for a decade, so it's been a pleasure serving with Gordon on the executive committee of Orsk for the last 3 years. I am also a counselor for Vulcan County. My division is in the center of the county on the west side of McGregor Lake, and we farm 7 miles southwest of Milo, and this is my first term. But before that, I was also a CAO for 2 villages, so I've been in local government for a little while, and I know Orsk reasonably well because of that. Um, anyway, it was a challenging uh, year last year as we began our budget deliberations at the beginning of summer, and we had to address budgetary shortfall that that appeared to be very similar to what had occurred in 2012, where the commission had to seriously rethink its overall revenue strategy and how it was actually going to have sustainable operations. And what we found was that we had to come up with a game plan to address this shortfall, and we thought about we could do it in 1 year, um, but that seemed like a pretty uh, harsh reality for a lot of, given that we have 44 member municipalities. Some would have been fine with that, others would not have been. And the other alternative we considered was 7 years, which just seemed way too long. And so what we settled on was 3 years. And we decided that going forward, we would really work to maintain a 3-year operating plan, and keep that up to date, and working towards having a sustainable model whereby our membership fees covered our fixed expenses. In the past, we were very reliant on our fee for service, and we found that the fee for service revenue was just too unpredictable, especially back in 2021, 2020, we had a major windfall of revenue from all of the intermunicipal development plans that the province provided funding for. There was just a lot of planning work, and fortunately, that revenue helped carry us through to last year, where it became very clear that fee for service just wasn't coming back the way we had initially thought of it. And so anyway, we've set out 3 goals in the presentation, which I believe all of you have received a copy of. The executive committee, of which there are 4 towns and 3 rural municipalities, really believe that if we pursued financial stability by having the fixed fees cover the membership fees cover the fixed expenses, but also look at revenue growth for our reserves, because we do have a building that we have to maintain, and ensure that our fee for service and our subdivision fees are actually contributing towards those ends, which are over and above our budgetary obligations that are fixed, and then of course intensifying our financial planning. So we really are planning to get into the budget process much sooner this year. We are also wanting to have that to the board and out to municipalities a little sooner if we can, just to give people a heads up as to what we're looking at. But I think the main thing that we have recognized as well in this process and in talking with our member municipalities is that we need to have an updated system agreement or membership agreement. ORSC, in one form or another, has existed for 70 years. This is actually our 70th anniversary. And the membership agreement of the current commission, some of them go back to 1995, and then there are more recent iterations, and we recognize that we've got to get a standard agreement in place for all of the membership. Of course, being a member, it was always based on a good faith arrangement between the membership and the services that we try to provide, which are very diverse and I believe are very good value for money. But we believe if we have a clear model for everyone, we can actually, that's part of our financial sustainability plan, is have a very clear membership agreement that's up to date and reflective of how the commission actually operates. So without, and I should mention too, that one of the big things we did as part of this budgeting process is we did increase the floor, which is for our small municipalities substantially. We raised it to $5,000. And then for the larger municipalities, which are mostly rural, that ceiling went up to 104,000. And and those models, if those ceilings weren't in place, it would be it would be very hard to justify what those municipalities would then be paying, and they probably would not be members. So that was part of the Lens can speak more to the history of the floor and the ceiling. But I think without further ado, I'll pass it over to Lens Kuiper. Lens is our long-serving Chief Administrative Officer. We've been very fortunate to have him for the last 20 years, and we will be very sorry to see him go at the end of the year, and hopefully we'll still see him in some capacity after that. But it's been a real pleasure having him work for ORSC for as long as he has. So I'll just turn it over to Lens. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Christopher. Mayor, Council, Administration, thanks for the invitation tonight to be here. We did provide you with a very long list of slides. I'm not going to go through those. You can read that at your leisure. What I do want to touch on is just a few things. Like Christopher said, I've been with ORSC for about 20 some odd years now. It's been around for 70 years in one form or another. Historically, we are, I guess, a provincial agency up until 1995, and it was mandatory for all municipalities to belong to a planning commission up until then. Premier Ralph Klein in about 1994 decided to do away with the Planning Act, and he also brought in the Municipal Government Act, and with that they closed all the planning commissions. Ours managed to sort of reinvent itself. We went back out to all our members at the time to see if they still wanted planning services and mapping services. We were fortunate enough to get most of them to sign on, like Christopher alluded to with the contracts or agreements that we're currently doing. So we built up from that time up to about 42 rural and urban members. We are a shared service, so we are owned by you guys, by the municipalities that we serve. Our employees are essentially your employees. They just are housed in Lethbridge, and they work for a number of municipalities. It just makes financial sense and bears some efficiencies that way to have it set up. How we make money, though, has changed dramatically since the pre-1995 days. All of your fees were once matched by the province, so we had a matching 50-50 amount of money to do things with. We had 42 employees in 1994. Currently, we have about 19 employees, so we've cut our employment in half. We also serve more municipalities. We do a lot more. I think we're a lot more efficient than we were in those days. Our revenue streams generally come from three places. They come from our membership fees. So what we do is look at your total equalized assessment each year, and then we apply a mill rate to it and do a requisition, much like you do for your taxes for residential and businesses in your community. We try to keep that to a relatively, our fees relatively low, because one of the benefits of being with ORSC is financial. We also collect money from subdivision, so all the subdivisions that are done are paid for by the applicants. I would say probably 99% of subdivisions in Southern Alberta are done privately. They're not done by municipalities, so that money really has no impact on our municipalities. That revenue stream, though, is extremely volatile. It's much like oil and gas prices. It bounces all over the place. For the last probably 10 years, we've averaged around $275,000, $300,000 in subdivision fees. In 2007, we made $1.4 million in subdivision fees. So you can see the volatility and the range of fees that come from that. Fee for service is another area where we make a little bit of money each year. When you do a brand new statutory plan, a brand new land use bylaw, ORSC does put together a proposal to council or to administration for a fee to do that. That fee is for the lifetime of that document though. So, if you don't do another land use bylaw for 20 years, we're still doing all your amendments, all your changes as part of that fee. We do recognize that alternative planners do exist in the province. You could go out to a private consultant. So we do watch what they charge and try to be very, very competitive with their rates. ORSC is a nonprofit. So we kind of zero balance our budget each year with a built-in amount for reserves to pay for buildings and other things. So that's sort of the gist of where we are there. In respect to Fort Macleod, your membership rates did go up a substantial amount this year. And it's due to two things. One is us at ORSC needing more money to balance our books. And the other side of it is your equalized assessment has dramatically increased as well within your municipality. So you are growing, and that's a very good thing, because not all of our municipalities are. A lot are struggling to remain viable. Yes, you have had an increase. I believe you're paying about $61,000 to ORSC for the planning side of services for 2025. Like Christopher mentioned, the executive has tried to do a 3-year budget out from 2025 and has sort of looked at keeping those rates relatively flat across the next 3 years. And that should allow us to build up a little bit of a cushion again with reserves. The last 3 years, we burnt through all our reserves, much like we did in 2012. And it's a little hard for some of our municipalities, some of our board members to agree to a raise when we're sitting on reserves. So they say, eat your reserves first and then come see us. And unfortunately, 2025 was that moment. I'm hoping that you find a lot of value. Gavin is your planner. He's been the planner for Fort Macleod for a number of years. In my discussions with him, I know he's quite busy in Fort Macleod. There's a lot of things happening, and that's a really good thing. And we also encourage you to call him as much as possible and use him as much as possible, and for your staff to do the same as well. Some of our municipalities are busy with us every single day, and others we have to constantly phone and remind them who we are. So I think yours is well aware of what ORSC does and that you do get value there. So that's a good thing. Yeah. I think he's out actually in another community tonight. So yeah, they're pretty busy. Like I mentioned earlier, we have about 20 employees. So I've talked about the revenue side. On the expense side, we also try to keep a very lean, operating machine going there. We don't have a lot of fancy things. We have a very sort of normal building. Our big expense obviously is salaries. I do have to compete with the city of Lethbridge and the city of Calgary and the city of Edmonton for planners. And we do have to pay fair wages for that. And we also have to recognize that our planners are out on the road quite a bit and spend a lot of time in municipalities when you have 4 or 5 or 6 of them to do work with. So it is a little bit different than working in one municipality. What else can I tell you?
Succession planning.
Yeah, there is succession planning as well. A number of our planners, Gavin included, are getting a little long in the tooth. Myself, I am retiring at the end of this year, and we have a process in place to look for a new CAO. A number of our planners, probably 4 or 5, are also going to be retiring probably within the next 5 years to 6 years. So we are looking at hiring new planners, training new ones as well, and getting them up to speed. So this is probably a good time not to bore you with more numbers and more stats. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're open to any questions that you may have of us.
Thank you, first of all. I think I speak on behalf of the town and administration that we've appreciated Gavin and ORSC and all that they do. It's not a small amount of work. I think we're getting close to seeing our land use bylaw
Yes.
cleaned up and approved, hopefully within the next 2 months. So that's been a long process, and these things take years a lot of times, right? Just to go through all the details and make sure we got them right. So I know I've really appreciated Gavin and all he does, and the input he brings to our meetings, and the feedback for council. So yeah, I think that's been very good. I don't have any major questions. Does council members, Councilor Monteith, you had?
I have two. And you partially answered it, but I just, after 22 and 23, you had large losses those years. I'm just wondering why, and you partially explained that some communities don't like increases, but it seems to me that small increases along the way instead of a large one are much more tenable to people. And the other one I was wondering about, you talked about your lean employees and whatever. Do you have enough time? If people actually have projects, do you have enough people to do the work, or are you going to be limited that way?
Good, thanks for those questions. I'll answer the first one. We've gone to about how many, 6 or 7 municipalities after we made these sort of dramatic changes to your membership fees. And I would say 100% of them agree with your statement that it's better to have continuous small increases each year, matched to inflation or whatever, than to hit you with a big one. Unfortunately, in 2014, we did some rejigging of how we do things, and the plan there was to basically do what we're doing now and to carry us through. Unfortunately, economic times, things like that, throw wrenches into the works. We have had years, though you're correct, where we've had negative increases for our members because we've had great fee for service or subdivisions. I would say most of our municipalities would like to have the small increases, but a few of them, when they see us sitting on reserves, when they don't have a lot of money themselves, say, eat those first. So we kind of have to balance, the executive has to balance the wishes of 44 different municipalities.
But you've proved that reserves are good because you never know what's going to happen.
Yes, and that's largely why we have them. So we have heard that this year, and I think our executive has heard that as well, and there probably will be just minor increases over the next little bit. It looks like almost every 10 years, 15 years, we do have to retool and figure out what we're doing. It just sort of seems to be the norm. And your other question was?
You have the capacity for extra work, et cetera.
That's always a challenge as well. And I would say we are short of resources. Our planners are stretched out. And part of that is just not being able to find people at the moment to work. We have an ad out for a planner currently. We've just taken in the town of Tabor as a member, and that would almost be a full-time planning position. They've been looking for a planner for a year and a half. The salary for that position was $150,000 with them, and they've had no luck finding a planner. I've had a planning ad out for a couple months now, and I've had 5 applicants. 10 years ago, I would get 100 applicants and have maybe 5 or 6 that would be good. Right now, there's just, I think, a shortage or a dearth of people out there that are looking at municipal careers. So I am happy to hear what Brent said with grade 6 kids coming in here and learning about government. It's certainly a viable career. They just, I think, are it's not on the radar right now of a lot of kids. The University of Lethbridge has an urban and regional studies program. There are 3 people in that program right now. 10 years ago, there were 45. It's kind of the flavor of the day, I guess. So there just doesn't seem to be a lot of planners out there. So yes, we are a little short on resources. We've managed to hire some good planning assistants, so we've taken a little bit of a different tact. And they're learning how to plan, but they're also assisting with a lot of the day-to-day stuff with the planners. So hopefully that'll bear some fruit.
Yeah, I think that was partially my question as well, like in your presentation on page, I think 36 and 48, you talk about development officer duties and so on, right? So, um, is that what that's going through?
Yeah, we're always looking to add new services. We added appeal services a number of years back, so we do subdivision development appeals with a regional board. We've added assessment appeal services as well for complaints on assessments. This year, we looked at adding development officer duties. Currently, our staff provides advice to development officers, but it is something that the municipality is responsible for. We also have a number of CAOs in the municipalities, the smaller ones that are DOs and bylaw officers and they're everything basically. And our planners are having to do a lot of hand-holding with respect to development officer work with them. I did read that the average lifespan of a CAO right now is about 2.5 years, which isn't very much. So a lot of them are turning over fast in the very small communities. Yeah, no, Fort Macleod I think is pretty big. These are the smaller places. They're just not able to keep people in there for any length of time. So we are expending way more time doing development officer work for them. So we did put a proposal together. We sent it out. Unfortunately, we don't have enough people interested in it. We're short money to make that work. Our executive was quite clear that it had to stand on its own and be paid for by the municipalities that use it. And we're short about probably $10,000 to making that happen at the moment. So we will, I guess, either go out to a few more communities and see what we can do, or it'll have to be dropped till another year. And
Or they just have to pay more?
yeah, or they'll have, yeah, but they've indicated they can't pay more. So we're at a crossroads with that.
Yeah, it's a
particular
hard one
service.
because you need someone to do it. If you
Yes.
don't have anyone to do it, then you don't have any development.
Yeah, we have someone willing to do it for us. We did the groundwork of that already, so.
But I
So we
mean,
have-
in the small municipalities, if they don't have someone doing that work,
Yeah,
wow, that's hard. Any other comments, questions, inquiries? Anything from your side, Anthony, that you wanna?
No, we've,
Your experience with Gavin?
yes, we talk to Gavin almost on the daily, sometimes a few times a day, sometimes we give him a day off. But no, we use ORSC services quite regularly, and we found his service very valuable over the years. And yeah, exceptionally good at what he does, so yeah, we enjoyed it.
Any other comments? Yeah, I think we've reviewed the budget. We don't have any concerns per se. I think at the AGM that I attended, like you said, the only people that were kind of questioning it is they thought it should go higher instead of staying where you have it. So you don't hear that too often where
No.
members are asking for higher pricing. But no, I think town looks forward to continuing working with ORSC, and wish you all the very best, and especially in the succession planning. That can't be easy.
no. No, change of the guard, so,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, good. Well, thank you very much, and if you do have questions, pin them all on Gavin.
Yeah, yeah.
How's that?
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. I know it wasn't that long, but thank you for coming out. We appreciate what you do.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I should reiterate, no one likes prices going up, so we recognize that and are really trying to hold those
Yeah.
in line. Great.
Very good. Thank you. All right. We will move on to our second delegation tonight, and we will invite our Sergeant Christian Lafleur to be able to present to council on a quarterly report. So look forward to hearing from you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council people. Would you like me to read the letter verbatim or just summarize it? Less painful. We've already held a town hall this past quarter. There's another planned this coming month. The idea of it is to get feedback from everyone as far as how we're doing as a police service and the police priorities. This last quarter, the town hall that I held was mainly the council. Not too many other people showed up, unfortunately. I'm hoping that this coming one will be better attended, just so we can set priorities that are important to everyone. The other aspect of this as well is the real-time operation center. That was ramped up a couple of years ago. Now it's coming in full force. The idea of that is, if I can give you an example, if we have a situation that's developing across multiple detachment areas, our policy state and police forces, our policy states that as that person comes into different jurisdiction, for example, they come into Fort McLeod, I take charge. They keep going and they go towards Pecani. As soon as they enter Pecani territory, I cease to be in charge. Pecani has to take over. The problem with that is some jurisdictions have less experienced police officers, or they have less people working. They're not really prepared to take charge of a situation, if you want. So what the real-time operation center does is they actually take charge of the situation, which frees me, for example, while they're in Fort McLeod, to respond with what I have. So if I need dog services, I tell them. If I need to lay a spike belt somewhere in between the two territories, they'll basically get hold of the other detachment because we all operate on different radio channels. So in that sense, it's good. After hours, if I'm not working or if my corporal's not working, anyone in the detachment can call them for advice. So that frees up from being waken up 3-4 times a night, giving advices and directions. So in that sense, it's been a good thing. So there are more experienced police officers are in those positions and they take charge. So, however, that being said, if we're having a conversation, I'll tell them, it's my scene, I'm perfectly comfortable taking charge, keeping charge. They're gonna leave it up to me. So, and as always, any priorities that you'd like to see me address or shifting, I'm always open to that. Questions?
So I believe the open house is March 10, correct?
Yes, 6:30.
And I think for council, that's only 2 weeks away roughly, so do as much as we can to promote that.
Okay, thank you.
It would be good to get more than council up.
I like your ideas.
We have to incentive people to come out somehow. I'm sure it could be live streamed too if we wanted to. Depends on how the interaction goes, right? Yeah. Yeah. Any other highlights? I know there's still been a lot of activity in town, back and forth. I think last week there was yeah, it seems like there's things going on still. Obviously, you still have work to do. Is what I'm saying.
There's always work to do. We've had a couple of, and it's pretty other stuff, but a couple of things that setbacks that we've had is the act that was allowing us to see who was selling copper wire, for example, or precious metal has been repealed. As a result of that, we've seen an increase already, well, actually the next day, in copper theft and a few other things. We're still trying to find backdoor ways to find who's doing it. I mean, we know who's doing it, proving it. Without that tool is something that we need to work on. And that's not just here, that's provincially. Every police force in Alberta was hit hard with that, if you want. Like I said, we know who the players are in town, and we're keeping an eye on them. We've had a few setbacks, because it's extremely hard to prove if, as long as, because the first thing they'll do, they'll strip the copper, for example, that they steal. We can't say where they got it from, and we need to be able to prove that for us to be able to take them to court. Because it's not illegal to have a truck full of copper wire, for example, right? You need to be able to prove it's stolen. So that's been kind of a kick in the teeth for all the police forces across Alberta.
What
We've
was
also,
the reason given for repealing it?
as human rights,
Pardon me?
Privacy Act, human rights. They were saying that they shouldn't have to provide IDs if they're selling copper wire, was one of the main reasons they give us. Not just copper wire, precious metals, I should say.
Okay. You had some other comments, right?
Yeah, we're seeing an influx in new people in town, in a certain area of town. An area, I guess, that's kind of being deemed as a low-income housing. We've already been called a few times there. Some of the buildings, some of the apartments there are starting to get street signs, apartment number, which is great. Otherwise, our response time would be, in one case, waiting an hour outside, trying to figure out, okay, can you see us? Can you come out to let us in? Because we don't know which building you're in. Talk with Anthony, that's well on its way to being fixed. A lot of buildings now have that. However, in this last week, we've had 2 stabbings in that apartment buildings. We've had a few other issues. So from what I'm told is a lot of people are coming in from different areas of the province. Calgary, for example, because that's one of the places that they can afford to live. So the government sends them there, the people are moving in. We've observed a lot of people that are in conditions, so on and so forth, moving into those buildings. Doesn't mean that they're going to do anything bad here. I'm just saying that it's something we start seeing, and we're starting to see a lot more call volume in that particular area.
At what point in time in those situations do you reach out to potentially the managers of the buildings to express some of the concerns?
We've spoken to him. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do. People can live wherever they want.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we're going to get into. We're just trying to identify maybe a possible solution or something to deal with. In the meantime, it's been keeping us busy.
Okay.
We've seen a small decline in theft because we're successful in having a couple of our prolific offenders held in custody, and we've been able to have them held longer than normally they would be. So we've seen a small decline. Like I said, we still have 2 prolific, or what I call prolific offenders, that are still out, and one of them we know is doing some of the copper theft, but not just in our area, it's all over the place, and a few other things as well. So,
Any other comments, questions? Yeah, as always, if there's anything you think council should be considering as things to support what you are doing, then we'd like to hear that. And I'm sure Anthony's been reaching out too, if anything from our side. Feedback.
we've had success talking to a certain group of concerned citizens. As far as we've had success in setbacks, let's put it this way.
Sure.
In one instance, there was an item that was stolen. They found it on somebody's property that we're aware of. We're aware of that person, I should say. They decided to take it upon themselves to go and retrieve said generator without letting us know, which is great for them. Unfortunately, had we known, we could have contained the property, and we knew 3 files we could have solved had we been able to do that. So in this case, the 1 file, the person got their property back, which is great for them. 3 of the people won't because we can't get in the property. That was our way in. So we're still going to be having some discussion with that certain group. We don't mind working with you as long as it's, within a certain realm, but we have to work together type deal. The same as COP or anything like that, right?
Yeah, any concerned citizen really, right? And as they start gaining traction in a group setting, that's, I think, where things can go
Mhm.
a little bit um,
Sideways.
sideways, is a good word. If people don't realize the impact they have on what else is going on, right? So,
Like I said, it's further conversation to be had with
yeah,
members of that group, and hopefully we can build trust, for lack of a better
yeah.
term.
Because I think it's a valuable connection to have when necessary, for sure. It's just how it gets used.
Yeah, and I get the frustration because I've spoken to members of that group. I've spoken to members of the public. There's a lot of frustration out there perceived that why should I call the cops? Because they'll be out before I'm even back in my car. Well, we have to work with what we have to work, right?
Yeah, you still have to start somewhere,
Exactly.
unless someone's, yeah,
And eventually, like as we build, we're able to hold them longer and longer.
yeah,
One of them is the main reason, like he's in custody right now. As soon as we're able to hold him in custody, crimes dropped big time in Fort McLeod because he wasn't there and the surrounding areas.
okay.
As soon
Oh,
as that person comes out, he riles up the other elements.
That's wild.
And I won't say the name, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
So as far as the priorities for the community, the number one priority, of course, is crime reductions. In this past quarter, there was 3 individuals that we identified with enforceable conditions. However, because they were continuing to do what they do for a living, which is being criminals, we got them into custody. In one case, we got them into long-term treatment. So that person just got released from drug treatment. We're hoping that that made an effect and it won't reoffend anymore. We did one warrant roundup this past quarter successfully. And then education tip of the week continues to be produced every week or when the Gazette is available. And from what I understand, it's still popular with the citizen because it tells them what happens and rising crime trends as well as what to do and what not to do. Priority number 2 being the traffic safety. I know we're still having difficulties enforcing the speeds on the one-way. We're working on that. So this past quarter, we issued 142 tickets and 3 warnings for a variety of offenses, ranging from speeding, no seatbelt, cell phones, and pedestrians.
Yeah, I guess on that one, I was going to mention the incident on the west side of town where the vehicle hit the transformer. That was an obvious speed issue, was it?
There was a lot of issues. We're waiting for some results on that before I can talk about it. But I mean, if I'm saying that we're waiting for a result, it should be fairly obvious what we're going for. But I'm not at liberty to say at this point
Yeah, yeah,
till we actually charge a person accordingly, unfortunately.
sure.
I'm not trying to be secretive, but I have to be wary
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
privacy rights.
Yeah, that was quite an incident, and
It was, yeah.
yeah,
Thank God it didn't happen last week when it was minus 35.
yeah, that would have been different.
So the goals for the years have been surpassed already. And we have one more quarter to go, which is coming due at the end of March. We did 3 joint check stop operations during Christmas and in this quarter. Interacted with an estimate of 250 drivers. And there we were able to get some impaired, we were able to get some warrants and a few other things as well. Goals for the year, as I said, have been doubled already. And we've got this quarter coming up that the numbers are going to reflect that as well. And police community relations, police visibility. We've already all met the goals and in most of them surpassed them. I'm still telling my officers to go out and be visible. The workload is quite heavy this time around though, so they're in the office a little more than I would like. But they still have to do the court packages and everything to prosecute the people we're arresting. So in there, I'm also gonna, a little bit later, I'm gonna tell you about some of the difficulties we're gonna have this quarter and going forward the next, hoping just few months, but it could be a little longer as well. Do you want me to go through consultations or? I'm sorry? Acting level?
Staffing.
That's the one thing I was gonna talk about. So on paper right now, I'm at full strength. That is actually this week, the picture is gonna change because we're not, although I'm gonna be at full strength, we're gonna have some setback. One of them is, one of my officers just told me that she's pregnant. So automatically I have to take her off the road and for the time of the pregnancy. After that, that member is allowed to go on maternity leave. So I'm envisioning that for the next year and a half, I'm gonna be short that one officer. So I'm exploring options right now and one of them is experienced officer that are joining from the police forces. There's 3 that are supposed to go to the depot right now. Well, in April. I'm trying to get one of them. And the one person I've pushed for is somebody with 15 years experience in the sheriffs. However, that being said, there's a lot of difference between us and the sheriffs as far as what they do and what we do. So they're gonna go to depot for 3 weeks, and if I'm lucky enough to get one of them, they're gonna have to go through the 6-month training. So for 6 months, they're gonna be tied with another officer. They won't be able to go patrol on their own, so I'm gonna be short basically one member. That would make up the member that's pregnant for the time being. As well, and he wasn't working tonight, otherwise I would have brought him. We have a new member in the detachment that just showed up. He's the replacement for Constable Crawford. Constable Crawford is leaving, her last shift will be the 3rd of March. She's going to Fort Saskatchewan. So she's leaving us. Her replacement is a recruit fresh out of depot. So again, he's going to be tied in with his trainer for the next 6 months. So with these 2 people, if you want, that are going to be either off the road or not being able to be on their own, on paper, I'm not short staffed, but we have to be creative. So ongoing, the Claresholm detachment, the Picanny detachment, and us have built a pretty strong relationship where we help each other. When I see that they're short, we go help them and vice versa, so that's going to make up for some of the time. We're going to get members on overtime, and as well, you're going to see my ugly face and my corporal's face a lot more on the road as well to try to make up for the difference, so that it shouldn't be a big difference as far as policing quality is, or quantity if you want. But, and I'm hoping that it's a temporary pain for long-term gain. However, that being said, Fort Macleod, going back, I want to say about 30 years, has never seen police increase. It's always been 5 constables. Fast forward 30 years, there's a lot of difference in size of population and everything. So I'm also working with my bosses to try to get more positions here. As I said, I'm not sure if it was the last council, we're the 2nd busiest RCMP detachment in Southern Alberta District, behind Picanny. When it comes to Alberta, we're the 11th busiest RCMP detachment. So yes, we're behind Airdrie, we're behind Sherwood Park, we're behind Red Deer and Grand Prairie. However, if you look at the number of people they have, population-wise and everything, the fact that we're that busy is kind of indicative. So.
Is that public information, the stats?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that Is that something we,
Well, the numbers, that's something that, for example, when you talk to my bosses, they'll share with you. If you look at the
Okay.
crime scene index, that'll be in there as well. It flows with the
Okay.
severity of the investigation that we're doing, for example. So one bad investigation, not bad investigation, one murder will tip the scale heavily with the crime and scene index. That's why, for example, I'm not saying they have a lot of murders, but they have a lot of violent crime. Pitt County is very busy.
Councilor Monteith?
I have trouble accepting the logic that we are fully staffed if we have somebody on maternity, we have somebody on disability, et cetera. I mean, if you take that situation to an extreme, if we have 7 people on maternity leave, we have no one here, but we're fully staffed. Like, that just seems like total illogical.
Well, it's what's called self-vacancy. So they're there. We're not technically on paper. We're not allowed to replace them because they're protected under the law, right? Their job is protected. So that's when we have to take other means, if you want. So in a bigger detachment, they're easily absorbed because if you look at Sherwood Park, where they probably have like 15 person working each shift, if they lose one person, it's not a big deal. You look at Fort McLeod, where if I lose one person, it is a big deal because now I have to get creative with the schedule. This, unfortunately, is totally out of my hands. So what I have to do is ask for people in overtime or plead with my superiors to see what can be done. So we are looking at trying to mitigate it, but it's not an easy process.
I know, and I understand you're under limitations, but it just seems to be a no-win situation. If you're down and suddenly you have to work your members more, they're more likely to go on disability or burnout or whatever. So we're just exasperating the problem without really solving it. And I understand you can't replace someone, but you can replace them while they're off. So, and I realize this is I'm just ranting a bit here, but it doesn't make logical sense to me. But I understand the logistics of it, but still, it bothers me.
I can tell you it bothers me as well. Unfortunately, I have to work within the confine of what's been set for me, and I can't deviate from that. I get where you're coming from. It's infuriating, and my concerns for my members as well. As you said, I don't want to burn them out. So that's why you're seeing myself and the corporal going out on the road a lot more, even though it's not our job. We're busy enough as it is trying to manage a detachment, but we're going to go out to try to make sure they don't get burned out. Part of that as well is the relationship that I've built with the other detachment commanders. Claire Somme is facing his own problems because he's got one member that's been off duty for a while. So we're helping each other. So in that sense, we're trying to not circumvent the problem, if you want, but trying to make it work. But there's no easy answer. I can't. If I had my way, I'd have like 15 members there.
50?
Well, sure.
Well,
I'll take
15.
15.
Yeah,
but I'd love
15 would
50,
be
yeah.
probably a minimum 10 almost, eh? Okay, well, if there's no other questions, again, we want to thank you and your team for what they do. We appreciate the work you do and wish you all the best. Yes. All right, after the delegations, we'll move on to our unfinished business, which is bylaw 1978, which is a road closure bylaw, and we'll ask our Director of Operations to speak to bylaw 1978.
Okay, so this is bylaw 1978 road closure. So we're looking to have the council give a second and third reading to bylaw 1978 to close the road to the public travel and creating a title to the disposing of the following described highways, subject to the rights of access granted by other legislation.
Very good. Anyone prepared to make a motion for second reading on bylaw 1978? Councillor Fox makes the motion. For information, it's roadways that have been in existence in behind Independent Grocer and the RCMP detachment for probably 20 years, 25 years, somewhere along that line. And we need to close up for the new subdivision. Any further questions or discussion from council? If not, Councillor Monteith.
Just wondered, what's this land now that it's not roadway going to be used for?
Well, that depends on which section. So if you look at the map there in front of you, the far, we'll call it the south piece, that is going to become part of the lot further south, Miranda, because it includes this piece all the way down there as well. So that's going to become part of the lot there. The part that remains in the road will remain roadway. And then as you go and turn down, this is going to remain a lot, and then it transitions into road again, laneway, and then that other piece there, that last portion that Miranda's highlighting there, that is going to remain, I believe it's public utility or utility right-of-ways, something like that, because there are a number of utilities that run through there. Eventually, we do want to continue a bit of a pathway back down that way through that laneway, but it all has kind of varying, I guess, new uses in the McLeod Landing subdivision.
Okay, very well. Is there any other comments, questions, debates? Seeing none, we'll call it the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? A motion for second reading has been carried. Anyone prepared to make a motion for third reading of bylaw 1978? Councillor Wolstenholme makes the motion. Any further discussion? Debate? Seeing none, we'll call it the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? A motion for third reading of bylaw 1978 is carried. Moving on then to new business, item 1, a memorial bench and tree policy, and we'll ask our Director of Operations as well to speak to this one.
Sorry, just getting organized here. So for this, we're asking the council to accept the Operations 018 Memorial Bench Policy as presented. Just a little bit of detail. So this has been overhauled. The most major thing is that we've taken out the tree aspect of the policy. We found that was not sustainable as operations with doing maintenance around the trees, with having those small signs. So the focus has been put completely onto the benches, and we have moved a lot of what might have been detail in the policy into the actual form and into the brochure, which were also attached for your review. So we're looking to have council accept this policy as presented.
Oh, very good. Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councillor Henniger makes the motion. Any further discussion, questions? So I think the main reason why trees was taken out is just due to the maintenance of the actual signage regarding the donation of the tree. Does that mean someone couldn't donate trees? If someone said, hey, I'd really like to sponsor a bunch of trees in town, are they still allowed to?
Yes, I mean, if someone came to the town and says, I want to, donate trees or, sponsor trees, we would just look at that as a one-off situation, and we would find an opportunity where we would direct them to put the trees in the most appropriate place, somewhere irrigated, because every tree that gets added that's not, around irrigation, then we've got people watering it, which, just adds man hours. So that was one of the things that we discussed. Before Brennan was here, we went over this in great detail, and Also the plaques, right? In the original program, to have a plaque and then kind of identifying which tree is yours. And then what if the tree gets sick and dies? Do we owe them a new tree, right? So it was just easier. A bench doesn't usually die on us, and so it was more simple and kind of a concrete object rather than a tree that's subject to health and other issues too. So those are some of the points that we had discussed previously. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Brendan?
No, and we did talk about the signs as well, being placed away from the tree and then doing maintenance with whippers and things like that, and just having the opportunity to damage those signs which they have bought. So just concerns around that as well.
So if someone wanted to do trees, you wouldn't be done as a memorial. It'd be basically, I think as long as people recognize they could still, say, sponsor or donate trees. I think we need more trees in town. Just with some of the old growth trees coming to the point where they're coming of age. And so, yeah, more trees the better, in my opinion. Helps kind of deal with some of the wind too.
Yeah, we hope no one sees this as us removing trees, us removing the desire to plant more trees or our plan to plant more trees. It's just in this program, if someone's looking for a way to celebrate the life of a loved one or something like that, that we want to direct them towards something that's easier to maintain. Yeah, on the side of the trees, we still have we're budgeting each year to put to beautify our town with trees and shrubbery and those types of things. So we don't want the Environment Committee thinking that we're now anti-tree. We're not. We're still pro-tree. It's just no longer part of the memorial program.
Okay, very good. Motion is on the floor. Is there any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion to approve the bench policy has been approved. Carried. Moving on to NRCB request for comments regarding Van Hagenbos Farms CFO operations, and our Director of Operations would like to speak to this as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. So the Council is to instruct administration to send a letter to the NRCB addressing the IDP version date and the zoning of the land within the 1.5 miles of the proposed site as requested.
Okay, so the recommendation right now, you're just asking us to approve sending a letter? You're asking, we needed to discuss our position on it as well?
I'll just give a little bit more detail. This item, I did have a chance to chat briefly with Brennan about this, but he wasn't here and when the original application went through. And so I guess what they put very clearly in their communication is that the original application was still approved. It's just that they're changing a detail that has to do with the distance from manure pile to the nearest door, like of the adjacent resident, and some of the distance from their, what do they call it, catch basin from the water bodies. And so they're making some minor adjustments. And because they've made adjustments, they are required to reach out for requests for comment. So our ask tonight would be that council, if you have a comment for us, to direct administration to put together a comment. I'm sure our previous comment still stands. When we had previously asked them to, I guess, really consider the complaints and issues that were being raised by neighboring residents in the MD, and those even close to, like, some of which were within the town boundary as well. But yeah, whether we didn't take a formal stance saying we were for or against it, although we did, I guess, echo the concerns of residents when it comes to the change from 2,500 head of cattle to 16,000 head of calves. And so yeah, if council has any instruction for us, if they want to accept this information with no comment, we can do that. If you want to echo the comment we've made previously, administration can do that also.
Councillor Monteith?
I'm just wondering, these were asked for our input, usually ignored. They get approval, But in this situation, who's enforcing that the rules that they said they do and they required are being met? This is where I don't understand it. I mean, that's typical, right? They approve stuff, they don't follow up and enforce, and then suddenly we have a big problem because incrementally it's gone from not a problem to a problem. So in this case, do the residents up there who it smells or whatever, are they, and who do they appeal to? Like, I just wondering what the process is once it's approved.
I'm not thoroughly familiar with the exact process, but the NRCB, being the Natural Resource Conservation Board, ultimately, if someone wasn't complying with the conditions of their approval, they would have to find out. I don't know how often, inspections happen. Like most government bodies, a complaint would probably have to come to the surface in some way or another that gets back to them, and then they would, send someone to inspect it. So I'm not familiar enough with that process or how often those, inspections or things like that happen, but that's something that we would encourage neighboring residents to do if they had problem with it. Us as the town, we could look into it as well, but ultimately we'd have to get word back to the NRCB to monitor and police the requirements of their application.
I would have to think that the process to some degree must be working if they're coming back with this application, because if the NRCB was not watching it all, they would probably just have gone ahead with the changes without coming back for a secondary approval, right? So it shows that somebody somewhere must be watching it, otherwise we wouldn't even be seeing this, is what I'm thinking. Yeah, who's gonna actually want to resubmit for in a sense, a few dimensional changes to where the pens are? So I don't know. I think a lot of our experience has been in the past with NRCB that they don't watch anything, but I think those days are I don't know if they're gone. I can't say they're gone, but I think they're going to get less and less, that people are able to get away just with whatever they want, right? So I don't personally have any comments, but unless council has further additional comments, I think, like I said, the original application has been approved. I guess if they don't change the amendment, what is the consequences then if they don't approve the amendment? Like, we can argue against the amendment is probably all that we can do right now. So I don't know that there's much merit in sending a letter if it's only speaking towards the amendment, because it's not changing the size or anything. So anyone prepared to make a motion on this as information?
Do we have to make a motion?
Yeah, we don't need to. We can just not have a motion at all and then it doesn't go anywhere. Or we can just receive it as information that we actually got it. It's registered and we've not done anything with it. So there's two routes.
Any desire for council to, I don't know, just kind of to echo what Councillor Monteith's comments are about the policing and the monitoring and, just sharing council's concerns with that. I mean, it doesn't have to be part of this specific application, but wasn't sure if that was something, just that reinforced message of ensuring that their standards are being met.
I certainly wouldn't mind a letter just keeping them on their toes, not even relating to the specific, situation, but just generally that, please.
As part of that, would it make sense to invite them maybe to council to have a bit of discussion to learn more on how they do things? I think we could send them a letter and get some formalities back, but maybe it's good to. We just want to learn more, I guess, is what it boils down to, because we're not really in this business that much.
So I should be polite so that they want to come visit us.
Yeah. Is that somebody's motion?
I'll make that motion.
Very well. Motion's on the floor. Any further questions or discussions? Clarity on the motion? I think the motion is essentially to send a letter requesting a better understanding of how enforcement works regarding these applications. Is that correct, Councilor Monteith?
And invite them to council as well.
Sure. Yeah. Very good. Motion's on the floor. Call to question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And that concludes the public portion of our meeting. I'll request a motion from council to go in camera for 3 items. Councilor Poitras makes that motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried.